I'm Mike Belsito, host of Product Unplugged, the series where we dig into the good, the bad, sometimes the ugly of what it takes to build product. This series is sponsored by Pendo. A big thank you to the team at Pendo. And of course, Pendo, the platform for improving the world's experience with software. And they've been a big help in making the series possible. So again, thank you to the team at Pendo. But these stories that we tell here on Product Unplugged, it's really meant to help you as the product person relate to what you're dealing with in the day-to-day. So we love hearing about the stories of creating products from scratch, sometimes dealing with the conflicts that you have to deal with when you're doing so, the pivot stories, all of that. So it's been a lot of fun, this series so far. And I know I'm going to have a lot of fun today because the person that I have as my guest, he has a big story to tell, and that's Aman Khan from the team at Arize. And Aman, it's awesome having you here with us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm so excited for this discussion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's been fun getting to know you. And, I know when we were talking before we even hit live in recording, you were just starting a little bit with the story of, what you've had to go through at Arise. And, specifically you're working within the generative AI space. It's a hot space. A lot of people are talking about it. Some people are trying to dabble in it, but this is a space you're living in. So I wanted to kind of turn it over to you. Maybe you could tell us where did the story start for you? How should we start the story here?
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think I can just give like a quick 30-second on myself as well, just in terms of my background and kind of how I got here, and then I'm happy to dive into some of the challenges we face at Arise and how we got to where we are a little bit in that
Yeah.
product building journey. So my name's Aman. I run up our product team here at Arise. So by way of background, I have an engineering background, kind of started my career in evaluations for self-driving cars. So way back in the day, in like 2018, basically figuring out if we're changing things on this self-driving car, are we making the car better or worse at the end of the day? That's basically what I became obsessed with. I started as an engineer in that group and then became the product lead for that entire team. So everything that was getting pushed onto the car would actually go through a system of tests and evaluations and understanding the right metrics. Are we looking at the right metrics offline and online to understand, are we making the car better? Fast forward a little bit and ended up working on Spotify's machine learning platform. Again, my customers have been data scientists and ML engineers, AI engineer people. So people that are like shipping AI applications or models, they're really concerned with, is this thing going to scale in production at Spotify, where we get billions of signals back from users, and we use those signals to give you curated playlists like Discover Weekly or personalization throughout the application. And then jump forward to where I am now, where I'm now at, which is Arise. Spotify is actually a customer of ours, and I'm still working on the same problem that I was all those years ago, which is evaluations, which is understanding, are we making, instead of now self-driving cars, we have kind of this new world of self-driving agents, which are agents that might want to take actions on behalf of users or go and crawl the web for you or perform tasks. Well, those still have the same problems. Are well, basically understanding, is the agent doing the right thing at a given moment in time? And so that's really the problem that we're looking to aim to solve and help our customers with. So we work with a lot of large scale customers, a lot of Pendo customers as well. Companies that are on our side are a lot of household names that are trying to get this question answered for themselves as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself and a little bit about what I'm focused on these days.
Yeah, that's great. It's a perfect place to start because you already alluded to the fact that there was this problem that you discovered, and that's what you've set out to solve for now with Arise. I'm curious, when you solved, or when I shouldn't say when you solved that problem, when you identified that problem, what did the next steps look like to sort of set yourself out to eventually solve that problem? I guess what did the 0 to 1 look like for you at Arise?
Yeah, definitely. So when I joined Arise, I was sort of the first like external product hire for the founders. So that it kind of looked like where the company had just closed Series A, was looking for a PM person to come in and help scale up the founders themselves. And so a lot of my early job at that stage of the company, look, we started with what we now call traditional ML systems, which are classification, regression, ranking types of models. These are models you'll see all over the world, even today. They're models that are used for recommender systems. They're models that are used for fraud and insurance and lending purposes. And these are basically boxes that take input signals and make output sort of recommendations or inferences, which we kind of call them in the ML world, which are, a certain number or point value of should you take an action or not. So they're kind of predictive systems. And that's really where we started and where the first 3 years of the company were. It wasn't really until about a year and a half into that journey where, we're like a fledgling company. We were like Series A, then we raised a Series B. And then all of a sudden, ChatGPT comes out, right? This is like 2022. And all of a sudden, I kind of get this feeling that these generative, chatbots are actually pretty good at some of the things that people might be using inference-based systems on right now. So you can use generative chatbots to classify. You can use them to predict certain signals as well based on input text. It's just that now instead of like clean tabular data, which is how a lot of ML systems work, you have to give them these like really clean like spreadsheets essentially of like these are numbers, and then they kind of go off and like start training on those numbers. Now you can just dump that into ChatGPT and say, can you reason about the spreadsheet? Can you give me insights on it? And so at the time, we were kind of playing around with this tool, and I still remember it was like Thanksgiving weekend. It was like right after ChatGPT comes out, and I call up our CEO, and I'm like obsessed with this thing. Like, and it's like a product obsession, right? Like the interface is so easy. I'm using it to like start predicting things on like stock market trends or weather trends, and it's like it's not always right, but it's like giving me answers, and I'm like, it can't be that far off. And this was like a toy version at the time, right? It was like GPT-3 or something like that at the time. And I'm like, I call up our CEO and I'm like, I think there's something here. I think that a lot of these systems are going to start shifting to generative, and there's going to be even more systems utilizing this technology. And our customer was data scientists and AI engineers, ML engineers. And the bet that we had to make at the time, which it felt very, you know, not consensus at the time, was, are you going to stick a bunch of PhDs and people with statistics in PhDs and tell them to start using ChatGPT to write models instead of the technology they were using before? No way. Like these people are not going to use a chatbot to start predicting things. Like that's crazy. But if we're wrong, this could be a massive, massive shift in the technology. And so a little bit of it was like, should we take a bet? Should we at least take off a slice or take off, a little bit of a bet in this area and see, could there be something here? And so that was really the inklings of what the product is now, which is, we do support all of those traditional systems, but we also have a huge department around LLMs and GenAI as well. So that's sort of like the early days of how we ended up identifying the problem area to go and tackle.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, I know for some that chat GPT moment, that was an oh no kind of moment, right?
Yeah.
But then for some, it's this seminal moment where it's like, no, this can be the seed for something special for our company. It seems like for you, it was more the latter, right? Like
Yeah.
hey, there's going to be widespread public adoption of AI. This could be a
Right.
really good thing for us. You're approaching it in a different way. Is that true? Am I kind of reading it right?
I think you nailed it. And I think like there's a couple product fundamentals we actually asked ourselves. So like it's great to, it was great. I think technologically we were impressed, right? This thing looked super easy to, I mean, the thing looked incredible. Like it was so good at predicting things, so good at generating the next token. We kind of knew how it works because intuitively we're like, we were able to understand the technology, at least to some degree of like how this technology works. But I do think that there was some product thinking that kind of sat underneath that of should we kind of invest in this area. One of those product principles is this easier to use? Why would someone go train a model if they can get the same outcomes without needing to do that step from this technology? Does this really make it easier to just get started in the first place? So that was the barrier to entry sort of component, right? And it's like the classic like Silicon Valley, like, as the technology improves, barrier to entry gets lower, you get more adoption. So that was really one of the main driving kind of product fundamentals that we really hedged on, which was that this is going to keep getting easier to use, easier to get started with. And then the next bet we had to make was, what we're seeing right now is a toy of what is going to exist in the future. And that if you throw enough, GPUs and you throw enough compute at this problem and enough data, you'll get more capable systems that can achieve more and get more correct over time. And so that was the other bet, which is not only is this going to get cheaper, faster, easier to use, it's going to get better too as a result. And so I think those two things really changed our mind about, will people be training these large models themselves, or are they going to outsource that to sort of centralized departments that are specialized in training these models? And that was a large part of the calculus for us as well.
Yeah, I want to. I appreciate that. That's all. Like, especially hearing the beginning of the story, it sort of sets the stage for everything else. Which is for your company, you're in that phase. You were in that 0 to 1 phase. You're also in that sort of, I'll call it like the 1 to 100 phase, like
Yeah.
finding those first 100 customers, users. How do you sort of go from one to the other? I imagine there were unique challenges in both of those phases. Challenges that maybe it's like, hey, how will we work through this? That 0 to 1 phase first, what did that look like for you? What were some of those big challenges? Yeah, maybe we could start there.
Yeah, I think that's it's kind of funny because it's like describing a startup within a startup a little bit, right? So like it's like this like kind of Russian doll of startups. Like we were building and incubating a small team that was developing this product, and the first question we had to ask ourselves is like, what's the product? What's the thing we're building? And we knew that the customer profile we wanted to build for was kind of the same. It's these people that are developing models or developing applications that are making predictions or generating something for their business. And so that generation or that inference was like some type of prediction at the end of the day. And so we kind of, that helped us bound the problem a bit because we kind of knew the customer persona we wanted to go for in terms of understanding better. But then the next question was, what are we building? And so we had to, I couldn't just say, hey, guys, we're going to go build a Gen AI tool. And then the team's like, okay, let's go do it. Like, they were like, what specifically do you want here? Do you like, and so, what that meant is we had to, and we're starting from zero here too. Like, we're trying to absorb, what ChatGPT's implications are just as fast as our customers are. And so what that ended up looking like was, hey, I'm just going to get on LinkedIn and I'm going to start messaging people with the title, AI in their title. And I'm just going to try to get them on a phone call and see what they're doing. What are they building? What are their challenges today? And so we really did a lot of discovery up front. That was pretty manual, right? So like the first part is like go out and talk to sales and try and do that. Like you kind of get an outside perspective that way. I will say, we're customers of Pendo too. And so what that means is I kind of know who our top customers are and who I can trust from our customer set that's probably going to be more advanced. And so that's really an advantage of having instrumentation and analytics like Pendo is you can actually go in and understand, okay, here are my top users. Let me just go talk to them directly. They're probably going to be friendlier. They're probably going to be more responsive than these outbound messages as well. And so we just got a way higher hit rate on that second group to actually just get them on a call and say, what are you building with Gen AI? So that was the first question that we had to answer and ask. And what we walked away with is I will often send in prompts to this model and I'll get an output. And I have no idea if the response is actually good or not. And on top of that, I have no idea what the impact of the input it is on the output. So if I try and change the thing in the middle, I don't know what it's going to do on the output. So those were the two fundamental problems that we were trying to solve is like, can you visualize and understand what the relationship is between your prompt and response? And can you find a way to improve on the response overall? Can you measure and improve on it? So that's where we started. That was like the nugget of information that we started building towards.
Yeah. I imagine once you got to the point where, okay, we're using this qualitative data we're pulling in,
Yeah.
it's going to help us inform that MVP, that initial product we're building. I imagine though at that point, getting it in customers' hands, letting them actually do something with it, um, so much comes out of that. Did
Yeah.
it change course at all, or I guess what was that process like for you and your
Yeah.
team?
So we did the classic like go 0 to 1, ship an MVP, and we put it out there. And I think there's another component of this, which is like you can't just like build it. And the first prototype we built was basically like a way for you to visualize your prompt and response data in sort of a new and intuitive way. So we use these things called embeddings, which are, structures, basically latent structures that represent your data in this like global space. And so what that means is like basically point cloud visualization of your prompts and inputs and your outputs, and you can colorize them. It's like a visualization tool to understand, are we improving on our outputs over time? And it was kind of cool, but it didn't like really get to the core of what we were trying to solve. We got a lot of feedback of like, yeah, this is interesting, but I wish it had these other like 10 things, right? And so we did the classic like MVP of build something that people were using, but then they dropped off really quickly. Like they were like, this is cool. They tried it once and then they kind of moved on. And so it was a minimal viable product in the sense that it was like technically feasible for us to build it as quick as possible. We gave an arbitrary deadline to the team, a sort of a fixed, time box of, can you ship this as quickly as possible before a major release, sort of announcement. And then we get it in people's hands. And then there's kind of two things that come next. And that's, you now need to figure out how to message it. So you have to build momentum behind that first MVP and try and use it as fuel for the next iteration that you're going to do. And so internally, what that looks like is aligning your go-to market teams. And this is what we had to do ourselves. We had to align them around what's the value of taking this approach and sort of showing and messaging around that, where the technical value is one thing, but actually being able to convey, don't have shitty responses anymore. Don't have like bad responses in out there in the world. That's the value to our customers, is like, don't put something out there that is not good. And how do you actually convey that in a way that, folks that don't really know about you want to hear about it more and make it interesting and engaging? That was one challenge. And then when we actually put the product out and we wanted to actually, get feedback on what's next, we had to kind of show a vision of the three things we were going to go do next. And out of those three things, it was like, should we do a different visualization? Should we have like continuous automation on this? Should we use another LLM to grade the responses of the first LLM? That's kind of meta. Is that going to work? And so we had a couple more bets. We basically took the first nugget and we were like, here's three more things we could go do. What would you like next? Sort of aggregated that and used data from our customers to make that decision. So it's kind of two things we have to go do next, which is like, get this MVP in people's hands, get feedback on it, and then actually use that feedback to iterate on the initial prototype and build a second system, which didn't look a lot like the first one, to be honest. It looked like a completely different product. But that's how you get started, right? You get the boulder moving a little bit, and the team, gets motivated by those small wins along the way.
Yeah. If you were to, you're looking at that 0 to 1 stage, the 1 to 100 stage I referenced before. Where do you feel like you are now? And I guess what's the biggest challenge at the current stage you're at right now? I just think it might be helpful as product people are thinking about
Yeah.
maybe launching their own AI products, like just trying to understand like how do those big challenges change when you go through those various stages? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a really good question, because I think it's like one of those, like, your mileage may vary types of questions in terms of what space you're building in and who your
Yeah.
customer is. So I do think it's helpful to have some principles around this in terms of, the approach that we took. So, and maybe just to like reframe that, the 0 to 1 look like, just get something out quickly, just build the MVP, get it in people's hands. 1 to 100, I would say we're in this stage now. We're past the 100 stage. We're probably like scaling beyond that. But you have something when people just start using it without you even trying. And so that's really the inflection point of usage. And your goal is to kind of get there. And so where we were really hyper focused was to get this MVP, get something that people want to use and is valuable to them. And then once you have that, it's going to be like kind of a manual process. It's just like showing someone like Uber for the first time, like it's kind of a foreign concept. Like, you're going to click this button and a car is going to show up and you're going to get in a stranger's car. Like, that feels uncomfortable for
Mm.
most people the first time they try it. But the goal is that you get to the stage where it's not someone from Uber convincing you that this is a product that's safe to use. It's your friends and it's people around you saying, hey, I can just download this app and get this product or service. That's really the point where you've hit some form of product market fit, which
Yeah.
is, you don't have to handhold someone to that stage anymore. But it might take a while to get there. And so we were in this kind of trough of like handholding, making it easier to get your data onboarded, making it easier. The first sort of like, for us, that like Facebook moment of like your first 7 friends, it looked like, just see your data. All you have to do was get someone to see their data, because what people were doing was they were just typing stuff into APIs and getting responses, and this data was going nowhere, or it was getting logged to a table that no one was even looking at. So what our goal was is like for you to see your data, and then we had to get that down to closer and closer to 0 in terms of how easy it was for you to see your data. So we kind of knew what the value looked like. And then you just have to bring the cost down to 0 as much as possible, which is, now we're not handholding users to get set up in the app anymore. We have an open source product with a community, which actually has community driven support, where people can kind of go up, sign up for free. They basically get started. And if they get stuck along the way, there's a free resource to actually go and unblock yourself. And that's really what that inflection point looks like, to go from, 1 to 10, and then from 10 to 100 or 1,000. I think the difference between 100 and 1,000 for us is actually pretty small from the effort, but that like 10 to 100 was actually a lot of manual work.
Yeah, I love hearing your version of what finding product market fit looks like, because it's one of those things that's kind of elusive for some people. It's like
Yeah.
well, you have it just based on a feeling. It's not like there's a notification that pops up on our phones that say like, congratulations, you've reached product
You hit it.
market fit. But
Yeah.
I love the example of, hey, it's when your friends start telling you about the exact product you're working on,
Yeah.
unsolicited. This is when people are starting to find out about your product almost on their own versus you trying
Yeah.
to like force it upon them. So I think it's a great example.
Yeah. And I'll tag on to that, and I'm curious as well, like how you view this, Mike, because like, from our world, like analytics has a pretty big role to play in that too. Like, obviously we kind of know the signal. You can get that's sort of the lagging indicator of like, you don't have to work so hard and people will use it, and you have friends, friends are telling friends, and that's the net promoter score slash like, would you recommend this to a friend type of product experience. But for us, we just looked at like metrics of like, how long does it take for someone to get their data on the platform. And so you need to have that instrumented, because then you can you can see where people get stuck on the way and bring those clock cycle times down to closer to zero. And so if we didn't know what to improve on in the first place, we would have been stuck, right? We would have been like
Yeah.
iterating in a in a vacuum. So I think you need that signal back from your product, and then you can kind of know what to improve on. Eventually, once you get there, you can feel it. You can feel people recommending you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's the challenge often is that sometimes you have a hypothesis of what that
Yeah,
product market fit metric is for you, that metric that you're like, this is the thing we're measuring. But over time that can evolve, or you realize that
yeah,
the way people are using your product, it may be a
totally,
little different than what you
totally.
thought, and so that metric has to change. So yeah, just staying on top of what that metric actually is important. You could keep measuring that, but
Yeah.
if things have changed, you have to adjust with that too, it seems like, right?
And I mean, like a great example of that for us is like, we there's been a couple hypotheses which we thought for sure, like we'll ship this feature, people are going to use it, they're going to love it. And then we kind of come back and look at the metrics, and you know what our number one like most used feature is in the whole app, and the tracing and evaluations, and it's dashboards. People want to build dashboards on top of their data. And we're like, this is so simple. This is like this product feature is like a nice to have. It's like I want to use it because I'm a PM. So we built out dashboard features, the PMs use them themselves. But like it turns out that's like what people want. That's what people keep coming back to. And so, I think that what the lesson from there is like, make it easier to use the thing people want to use, and then try and build more value into it, connect it back into different parts of the platform. So it's not usually, I agree with you. It's very rarely do we get it right on the first swing of like, this is what people want, and then they use it and we're like, everyone walks home and we're like, pat ourselves on the back. It's usually pretty unexpected how people use your products.
Yeah. Having gone through the process you've gone through, and knowing the stage you're at right now, for others that are watching and saying, hey, a couple years time, I want to be in those shoes. I want to take that idea I'm working on and start to really iterate with it, get it in customers' hands, find myself on the path to product market fit. What unexpected, whether it's challenges, pitfalls, however you want to think about it, what do you think people ought to be paying attention to and looking out for in their journey, specifically, within the world of Gen AI too?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I think, look, this technology is like in this like iPhone moment, right? Like everyone is using ChatGPT. The amount of impact it's having on people's lives from both a personal lens, but also enterprise lens, which is when you show up to work, like what AI tools are you using? I think the rate at which the technology is developing is really massive. Like it's really unexpectedly high. So to me, that kind of signals three things that you can kind of keep an eye out for as you're thinking about building AI products yourself. And it's really, I think it's pretty simple, but this is like the framework I use for whenever I'm assessing a new technology as well, be it AI or something else. And one is you want to kind of learn the fundamentals. You want to kind of get started out there with what are the resources that really help explain this technology to me and how it works, so that I can understand the boundaries of it. And people learn in different ways. So I've actually like compiled a list of resources for PMs or product people that are, trying to either learn visually, or they want to learn from a textbook, or they want to learn by doing. But I think there's like intrinsic knowledge that you need around the technology to understand what the boundaries are. I think the next stage is really curiosity. So having, and that can look pretty simple for different people as well. Like it doesn't have to be, I need to go build a business around this thing. Like the first AI prototype I built, it was like a storybook creator because my partner, she wanted to build a storybook for her niece and she wanted to be personalized. And so we looked at services out there of what can we do to actually create a personalized storybook. There wasn't anything out there. And so we just built one. We built an app at home that basically took an idea like a name and a storyline, and it built a storybook for you with images. And that was like a fun weekend project to try to solve. And I think that's an example of like, no one's going to give you that passion. You have to go out and find it. And that can look different for different people, but I guarantee there's something that you care about that is interesting, that drives your curiosity. And there's ways to make that easier and more exciting or interesting with AI. And then I think the last thing, last but not least, is really just trying the tools yourself. So there's a multitude of tools now to help you get started with building AI prototypes. And I'm a huge proponent of like PMs. I think PRDs are probably dead in the next couple of years. I think people are going to show up to meetings with prototypes. They're going to be wireframes. You're going to come ready to the meeting with your go-to market docs. You're going to come with the messaging. You're going to come with the clickable prototype, and you're not going to need anyone. It's permissionless. You can just show up to the meeting with this thing that's working and can convey your point. And there's no gatekeepers around that anymore. And so I think the combination of those three things are really the foundation. Because at the end of the day, look, if everyone's going to be an AI PM, that doesn't mean that like the job goes away. It just means it gets more specialized. It means that you have more specific knowledge in fintech or healthcare or legal tech or whatever your interest might be. And you can combine these skills and tools to get someone on the other end to see your point of view. And that's my advice, or what I implore people to be able to do, is like get that foundation, let your curiosity take you to that next level, and then just go try the tools yourselves and try to ship something that you find interesting and compelling.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's pretty much a great place to end on, because we're already towards the end of our time here. The conversation went by super fast. I feel like we've been talking for 5 minutes, but that's usually a really good sign. Aman, before I let you go, is there anything I didn't ask that having this conversation, you're like, Mike should really ask this question. I want to make sure I get this one point across. Sometimes it's that last point that really sticks with people. So is there anything I didn't ask that you think is relevant here?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I think like I'd almost ask, I have like a question for the audience a little bit here, which is, I think as people watch this and they're, building with tools around AI, and they're thinking about AI, and they're thinking about, trying to get in the trenches with this technology and build products themselves. I wonder, like, the question I have is like, how do you know the thing you're shipping is actually working the way you expect it to? And look, I mean, even myself, when I'm building prototypes, it's like I need to get underneath the weeds to really understand it better. And so the question I ask is like, do you have the right tools to understand that? And I think that, stitching the right tools together can make a lot of difference at the end with what, success looks like. So whether that's product analytics or AI analytics, I think it's really important to peel back the onion a little bit as well. So that's the thought I leave you with, or like the thought I would kind of like ask folks out there is like, once you ship something, do you kind of know how it works underneath it?
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, we'll leave the audience with some food for thought. Hopefully, we'll get them thinking, and they can look us up on LinkedIn and let us know the answer to that question if they want to do so. So, Aman, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us here.
Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure being on, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, everybody who's tuned in for this. I will see you again at our next story. Thanks, everybody.